This ultrasound tech was very aggressive. My daughter never showed her face the whole pregnancy. So she, was like, oh, we gonna get it. We gotta see her face. Like, we gotta make sure everything's good. And so, she was digging and doing that. And I ended up passing out. If you can afford the nanny, get the nanny. If you can afford the chef, get the chef. If you can afford the maid, get the maid. Be patient with yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, you're gonna go through some highs and lows. Your thoughts and mentality will change throughout the process. One day you'll look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself. One day you'll look and it's like, oh, there she go. There is no time limit on postpartum. I would say prioritize, and you can break it up into quarters. As a former athlete, I looked at things in quarter systems.
Welcome to Baby Bump and Business, the podcast for creative moms growing a baby and a brand at the same time. I'm your host, B. Troford Wilson, photographer, educator, and first-time mom, sharing the real unfiltered journey of pregnancy, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Each week, I'll be joined by a fellow creative mom to talk about the beauty, the burnout, and the balance of it all. So let's get into it. Today's guest is Erica Calhoun. Erica is a multifaceted creative, sports media professional, business owner, mother, and wife. Known for her bold visual storytelling and ability to capture authenticity through the lens, Erica has built a reputation for elevating the voices and visuals of teams, athletes, and brands all across the United States. As a creative, she blends her passion for athletics, design, and media to create work that inspires and empowers. Born and raised in Gary, Indiana, Erica is a proud mom of three and owns two companies, EC Marketing and Media and Campus Vision Productions. So let's dive right into it. Erica, you started your first company while you were pregnant with your son. How did
I
that
did.
influence you to become a business owner?
Okay. So it's interesting. I was in the sales world. I was an account exec. And so I love that field because it allowed me a flexible schedule. I'll say that. And then like every day it was something new. However, I was in the car a lot. I was in and out. My route was huge. I live in the DMV area, so my route was huge. Nothing is close. Everything is like a 20-minute minimum drive. And so my husband had just moved up from Alabama. So we're trying to get used to now coexisting in the same home. He had proposed before he moved up, so we're in the middle of wedding planning. And then for me, it started to be, well, I'm closing deals for another company to make money, and they're giving me not even a quarter, like 1% of the deal. And I was like, so I know how to close deals, and I have this talent. My mom was a model. I modeled. She was an entrepreneur. She never had a 9 to 5. So I watched her build. So for me, it was like, I know what I'm doing. I have a talent. I've watched it all my life. I started with graphic design. So I was like, let me just step out. My husband said no.
Like, we're going to say where it's safe.
No. Because for him, he had just moved up. He was trying to get his footing in the area. And so he was like, absolutely not. I don't think it's the time. And I said, it won't take me long, I promise. And so literally 2 weeks before our wedding is when I made the switch. And by the end of the year, we were good.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. So building a business while being pregnant, what was that like? Because again, like you said, it was a little bit difficult knowing that your husband just moved up there. So what was that like, especially being pregnant and going through all of what that comes with?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't even remember a lot of the thick of it because I was also coaching basketball. My husband, he's a football coach. So we were, when you're in season, that's where your mind is. It's
You
like
just
the next
moving.
game, the next. And so you just going. But I do remember, a part of that was, so our family is not here. My family is in Indiana. His family is in Alabama. So we also didn't have like a close network that we can trust. Well, for me to watch the baby. So that was my thing. I didn't want anyone to watch my child. I didn't want to be held to a 6-week maternity leave. I wanted to be able to create so that my child can be with me at all times. And that's kind of how I grew up. I was with my mom all the time, no matter what job she created. I was like the assistant. So I kind of had, some experience with that. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good to me.
So having that experience, so let's say your son was born, right? So what was that transition like, and how did you put him in that fold? So were you positioning your work to be able to bring him on board? What was that childcare like? What did that transition look like for you?
Yes. So it was mandatory that he be with me. The only time that, like, if I was at a game, then, maybe my husband or my mom will come and my mom stayed so he was born in November, she stayed to January.
Okay.
So, one of them would be in the stands or something holding them, and I'll be doing my thing. And I would breastfeed during halftime or whatever. The funny thing about him is he wouldn't take a bottle,
Oof.
so no one else can feed him.
Oof. See, now that's hard, and people don't talk about that, like, when you're working especially when you're working in sports, halftime isn't as long as it really feels, right? So it's like, "Okay, I gotta rush to do this, I gotta pump, I gotta do this." How do you put all that time in play?
And I really don't know because during that time too, people were still dressing up on the sidelines. I got on a full dress and trying to make sure nothing leaking, everything is back right by the time I get out. But he actually surprisingly was a easy baby. And so my mom said, after a while they will adjust to your schedule and what you're doing. But he slept through the night. And so a lot of times I would use overnight to work. And he slept pretty late into the morning. So he would probably wake up around like 9, 10 o'clock. So that
Nice.
gave me time to at least get like a couple of hours of a nap in. Me and my husband had a deal where if I was up feeding in the middle of the night, then he was changing. So we tag teamed that part. And so yeah, the earlier years, yeah, he was pretty easy. I didn't bring him out until that 2 month mark. Yeah, it was fairly easy. The recovery for me was the hard part because he was a bigger baby. Like he had the whole splitting of the abs and all of
Oof.
that. I went through all of that. So it was more so of I'm a former athlete. I've never had a stomach. So I couldn't even hide the pregnancy long. And now I got one. And I'm like, we do what we doing? So it was just that recovery and also being an athlete that dealt with a lot of injuries and never set out. And so I'm still hard headed and it's like I'm good. I'll just push through. So yeah, that was more so of what I remember during that time.
Gotcha. So talking about the recovery, so that was one thing that no one talked to me about, and I was like, I wish I knew more going into that. Going into that from like you said, being a former athlete, and now your body's going through changes, and then I'm stubborn too, so I was like, 3 weeks later, I was like, I mean, I could walk, I could do this job real quick. It's only a couple hours, you know. So with that stubbornness and with that recovery, how did you keep going mentally? Because it's really it is a physical game, but it's also a mental game when you're trying to adjust to a new norm. When it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not ready for this. I'm looking in the mirror and I haven't seen this version of myself before.
Yeah. I had a friend that when I told her that I forgot what I did. It was something I looked in the mirror, but I was looking at everything. And she was like, "Why would you do that? Don't do that. Don't do that no more." And so I didn't. And so then it was like life just kept going. And again, because we're both coaches, once basketball season was over, and this is a time where again the business is starting. So I'm covering teams while being on the sideline. So after those winter sports, then it goes right into he was also coaching track. So now I'm bringing the kids out for track, and then we go into football camp time, and then we go right. So it was like you just kept going, and so for me, I'm like if I stay busy, I'm naturally active anyway. So we can get this going. But he also, my husband, wanted to go through a diet. And so he was dropping weight. And so I'm like, okay, so we just gonna do this together. So we were doing stuff together. I had a best friend that was getting married in May. And so it was time to get dresses and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm still pumping. I don't know what size I'm gonna be here. It was like that type of stuff where it just kept me going, where I didn't really think about you're crazy. You're not giving yourself time. You're not, like it's just you and the baby. And my mom to this day, she'll say, you never really let yourself heal. You still going.
Right.
But yeah, you just keep going.
And I think that's a hard thing, especially when you enjoy and love what you're doing, right? Like I tell
Yeah.
my mom, I'm like, I love what I do. So it was hard for me to say no to jobs when I started getting too big or I couldn't stand longer, all those different things. And then now that you have a newborn and now that you have a child, it's like, of course you want to be there for that newborn, but you still love what you do. And it's like, I don't want to say no to all these opportunities. And especially as freelancers, you don't want to keep saying no because it's your business and you don't want it to be like okay, we can't rely on her business because she has a
Yeah.
child now, and it's like all these
Yeah.
thoughts that go into play.
Yeah, and I wasn't I'm not from here. So that was the other thing is coming into a place that I don't have any roots. People know me from the basketball world, and really not really, because I didn't start coaching here to 2015. My son was born in 2018. So the basketball community is small, but not that small. So it was also, for me coming from the sales where I got goals that I got to hit, so I can't slow down. I got to close deals. And then now it's not just closing deals and you hand it off to the next team. Like it's you
You
that got to fulfill it. And yeah, so it was like I gotta keep going. I gotta, get the foundation set. So eventually it can run on its own. But right now it's me.
right. So now going into so you have your first child, your stepchild who was 4 years old, then you
Yes.
started your business with your second, and then you had a third child. So what was that like? What season were you in your photography and design business when you decided to extend your family a little bit more?
So by that time, I had a few clients under my belt. So with my first business, the main goal was to get full athletic departments or full programs. So I had a few programs under my belt by then. This one was a surprise. Well, both of them were, to be honest. I was in denial with both. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. So we found out about her right before people knew what COVID was.
Ooh,
This is when they were like, "It's not the flu, but I don't know what you got." So I just knew I wasn't feeling myself. It wasn't that I was sick, but I was like, "Something is just off." So I went in to ER, and this is when they kinda were like, "Okay, we don't really know. We'll do all the tests." And so they came back and was like, "It's showing that you're pregnant, so we're gonna do it." And I was like, my husband was like, and so this is what we found out, 2020, technically, the early 2020, so, like, January 2020. So, I don't think I was even 4 weeks yet,
ooh,
and so they were like, "We're gonna do an ultrasound," but the ultrasound wasn't showing anything, and so it took some time, and now it's starting to get to the announcement of COVID. Um, my husband couldn't go to doctor's appointments, and then they were trying to they saw, like, the levels going continuing to increase, but she still wasn't showing on the ultrasound. So it was a lot happening during that time,
right.
and then dealing with my 4 well, she was 5 at the time, but she's in pre-K and transitioning into kindergarten and, that whole thing of it. So by the time I went through that full process, he was never able to come to a visit.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Oh man. Oh man, that's tough. That's tough. And I that even like going through COVID was just I hope we never have to deal with that again. That's
never.
one that I'm interested to see what our kids learn in the history books when they start talking about it. But that is just oh my God, like going through that. So what were those like I luck sadly didn't have that experience, but what was that like having not being able to have that support going to those appointments because that is something that we need, you know?
Luckily, FaceTime, but it was interesting because one incident did happen, like, further in the pregnancy where, they needed me to so my doctor's office was in Maryland, but they needed me to go to DC this time to do the ultrasound, and so this ultrasound tech was very aggressive. My daughter never showed her face the whole pregnancy. So she, was like, "Oh, we gonna get it. We gotta see her face. Like, we gotta make sure everything's good." And so, she was digging and doing that, and I ended up passing out. And so I was on FaceTime with my husband. I kept saying, "Oh, I'm hot and I don't feel good." And they had me sit up. And so the next thing I remember was I'm listening to him cuss people out. I'm hearing his voice, I'm hearing people running in. And so when like he was about 45 minutes away. So by the time he got to the hospital, they wouldn't let him back. Yeah.
Oh, man.
'Cause this is, like, really thick of COVID, and so they monitored me, but I was alert enough to remember that they never put a baby monitor on me.
Mm,
So we literally left there and then went up to like, my hospital was closer to Baltimore, so went up to Baltimore to now check in to make sure that the baby was fine and things like that, which, the baby was fine, but, that coulda went a different way.
right. That's
Even
scary.
during delivery, they only did you had to go after a day if the baby was fine.
Wow. That's
24 hours.
crazy. That is
Yeah.
crazy. So going through that during COVID, but also as a business owner, what did you have to do in order to sustain your business during that time? And especially the DMV was different. Like the lockdowns there were real lockdowns. Atlanta, we didn't have a real lockdown, but there
Gotcha.
y'all were really like, if y'all outside, y'all get stuck.
Yep. So, actually, that's when the second business was born.
Mm,
So, the production company targets schools, and so because of COVID, everyone needed multimedia products, they needed commercials, they needed social media campaigns, they needed all of that stuff. So it actually got busier.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome.
Crazy part. And so with her, I was back working. I had a media day with Coppin State women's basketball 5 weeks after delivery. And you gotta remember, I'm pushed out 24 hours after, and I had her naturally. She was 9 pounds, 6 ounces, 24
Oof.
inches.
Oof.
So I was back. I was, like, bound up, but yeah, and no assistant.
Oof.
Yeah, I pulled that one off by myself, and my mom was in town again, but she was like, "Girl."
You sure? You sure you
And I was like, I mean, but, we gotta make it happen. But it was also too, because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, well, this is my 2nd birth. I'm alright. I feel okay."
Right.
And I was this she would take a bottle so I could pump and hand her off, luckily. And that probably
Right.
was what made me feel like I had a little freedom
Right.
because I couldn't do that the first time.
Oh, man. So 5 weeks after, I mean, I can't say nothing because I was too early too, but so 5 weeks after, and I think like you said, it's like one thing I remember my doctor telling me afterwards was like, "Listen to your body. Like, your
Yeah,
body will let you know if you're doing too much or if you can't do something." And that's been
yeah,
my motto. I know my body. I trust my body. She gonna let me know if like, "No, sit down. No, we can't do this." And again, when you love what you do, it's like, if I physically feel fine, I'm gonna make it work, you know? So after having your second, what was that transition like now that you have 2, which are close in age and you're still working with these schools, you're doing all these different things? 1, did you communicate with your clients what did let's go back. Did you communicate with your clients that you were pregnant and going through this transition?
yeah, they
You did.
saw it. It was
They
so hiding.
that's I was like, "Ah."
It was so, one thing that I do with all of my clients is they end up kinda turning over into like, I try to create a family atmosphere. So it's like that's one of the sales is that I'm a mom and I'm a wife. So everything I do come with a certain care. Even like I always say I do a terrible job with my own social media, but most of my art is displayed through me capturing my kids and my family. And then at that point, I started to create work around my family. So even for my husband, his goal is to move up the coaching chain.
Right.
And he ended up getting a college job before she turned 1
Awesome.
with
Awesome.
Clark Atlanta.
Awesome.
And so that's what we're talking about, and he had to move in 5 days.
Oof.
Yeah. So all of that was happening. So now some things started to change. Like for me, it was like I remember you talking about this on one of your other episodes. It's like the health insurance and things like that. And so, you know, for most of the time, he covered us. And so with this transition, though, it was like, okay, I got to kind of look at this differently because I know what comes with that job. There's a
Right.
lot of movement that's happening. And so I was like, we need something a little stable. And then I have a good friend that's a head coach at a university for women's basketball. And she was like, hey, I'll say this as Black women, we hold ourselves to a different standard when it comes to asking for help.
Oof.
We're like supposed to do it all. And she said, so I'll say this, if you can afford the nanny, get the nanny. If you can afford the chef, get the chef. If you can afford the maid, get the maid. She was like, whatever you need to do to make your workday easier to get through, do it. And so
Mm.
that was my thing, hired a full-time nanny, had a maid service come in once a month or whatever the case may be, but it did help, and it allowed the freedom, like I told him, I was like, "I don't wanna move the young ones just yet. You go ahead, my father lives in Atlanta, so you can live with my family, go on with that, and we'll come down to the games, give us a year, and then we'll move down." The part was he left there before. And so he came back this way, but yeah, it we made it happen. So it
Ri
was, those things where you like, it's a new playing plan. And so you still don't get to think about what you're going through. You just running the play.
Right. And I love what you said because, like you said, it is hard for us to ask for help. And that was one of the things that was the hardest thing for me transitioning like through my pregnancy was knowing that I had to ask for help. I couldn't just be like, I'm gonna figure this out by myself. But it's like, no, ask for that help. And even the simple things like you said, getting a nurse, I mean getting a nanny, getting a cleaning service, like finding those little things to be able to feel whole, to be able to do your job and to know like I need assistance with this because I can't carry all of this load anymore. And
Yeah.
that's so hard for us to do. And sometimes, it's like a little bit of that guilt where it's like why can't I do it? And it's like, no, it's okay. Like that's why all these services are out there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has worked. I still have my nanny to this 5 years. I still have my nanny to this day. She is now family, and granted, all of them are in school now, but, she family trips and things like blessing.
Right. Okay, so now talking about that experience with the nanny. So you said like with your first one, you were like, I'm not trusting anyone. What was the change for you to be able to get that nanny? And then what was that process like to find the right one?
I think the change was now it's 3 of them.
It was like, this a lot.
So at the time, the school that my husband was at, again, this is during COVID. So one of the things that they provided to the teachers was because they were working from home, and that first round they saw like, okay, you got kids running around in the back, you got dogs barking. And so they provided a nanny service. So pretty much they paid, I don't even, at the time, we didn't even know what the difference was, but all you had to pay was $10 an hour
Oh, wow.
for the nanny. Now, with the service, once you put in your schedule, then they would send whoever was available. Now, that part I was not okay with. But once he said that, we decided that he was going to take the job in Atlanta, I'm like, okay, now I got to really look at this. So I looked at a few options. I looked at au pairs. I looked at what was it, care.com. I looked at a whole bunch of stuff, but this one I was like, okay, this company was referred to us through his job. So let's stick with this. And then let me just look at some of the people that came multiple times. And the funny part is the nanny that we currently have, we joke about this all the time. I put her on the do not return list the first time she came because my oldest was doing virtual kindergarten. And when we left, she convinced her that they didn't have class that day. And I was like, oh, she a pushover.
She got a
And somehow it ended up slipping through the cracks, and she came back once my youngest was born, and she is great. They love her. Her children were her youngest was transitioning into high school at the time. Her family lived not far from us and things like so it ended up working out perfect. And she actually brought up the idea of full time. And I was like, yep. And she was like, I can leave that and we can do this. And I'm like, perfect. So
nice.
it just kinda, worked out. That definitely was a blessing because I do know some people who have a hard time finding
Right.
a solid nanny like that.
Right. And so having that nanny, it allowed you the flexibility to go out and do all these different jobs and not have to worry of childcare or worry about bringing them on board, bringing them to the jobs, bringing them to the shoots or things like that. Is that correct?
R Yeah, at that point, I no longer had to bring them with me, or if I did, she could still be with them. She would come on set with me sometimes. Also, she had a history where she had her own daycare, and I think her daycare folded, like, right when COVID was happening as well, and so it was the educational piece too. It was almost like homeschooling.
Nice.
So that part was like I was like, "I won."
Right, like, whew, hit the jackpot. Awesome, awesome. So now that it's 2025, we're going into 2026. Crazy how time is flying, and you're still managing both of your businesses with 2 kids. What would you say is something that has helped your business survive being a mother, being a wife, and being a business owner?
So I would say really pouring into the foundation. I was really big on making sure the structure was right. And that might be a gift of mine because I know sometimes when I'm with teams, as far as like the people that I bring on for, management, a lot of people don't see that. A lot of people think I need to get things out quick and do this quick and I'm more tactical in that space. And so I was clear on what EC Marketing Media was gonna be doing and what, those clients look like, and I was clear on what Campus Vision looked like, and we ended up expanding to hospitality with the hotels and things like that, and so I was clear on doing things that I knew wouldn't run out with AI eventually coming into play. Now, it's interesting because when I did Olympic trials, that was my first time stepping out as my name.
Ooh,
I've always hid behind the companies. So that was a new thing and it's still a new thing of doing things as Erica. And so that's been the hardest transition for me. It's like, okay, well now I feel like it's 3 companies. But the kids, I feel like we groomed them to be able to express their emotions and their feelings on, when they feel like we're doing too much or they don't want to be involved or want to be involved. And luckily a lot of it they do want to be involved in. But, as they're getting older, they're starting to say, hey, we want to have more time where we can go to the playground, or we wanna have more time where we can, those type of things. So I would say that's been the biggest adjustment here in 25 going into 26 is really balancing that time where they're starting to be more active in their
Mhm.
own lives
Right.
and managing this.
Right. And so with that, like, I think that that's beautiful that they're able to speak that. They're able to tell you, those different things. And I think that that's one of my, I want to say concerns, but it's one of my, like, especially when you're on the go. And as freelancers, our schedules aren't a set 9 to 5 every single day, and it's like, okay, it's because someone asked me like, okay, like what's your new work schedule going to look like now that you have her? And I'm like, I don't know. And it's like, I'm like, I can't plan that out, It's like now even just trying to figure out, okay, if my husband's off this day or trying to figure out both of our schedules, like, okay, are you gonna watch her? Do we need to find someone to watch her? Or can and it's one of those things where the transition is not as easy as a lot
Yeah,
of people think it is. It's not a set answer. It's one of those like, I'll let you know day by day, hopefully we can get to week by week and month by month. But for now, it's literally day by day.
yeah.
And so now that they're older and like you said, like it's a little bit harder now that they're able to vocalize the different things that they want to do. What are things that now you're trying to implement within your business to be able to allow those opportunities for them?
I'm very strict about my time.
Mm,
So if we said that it was gonna be, um from here to here, especially, like, when I'm on location, like, when I'm in meetings, I'm more flexible or, like, talks and things like that, but when I'm on location, especially because things take a while to get to and get from, I'm very strict on that time, and so I make it a point too to plan their time, and sometimes things don't go as planned.
right.
My youngest had a birthday party she was invited to on Saturday, and my husband was, um, out doing some recruiting stuff and it ran over. And so she couldn't go to the party. And so then it was like, okay, we'll take you to an indoor playground to make up for it tomorrow. But then when tomorrow came, the schedule got busy. And I'm like, oh shoot. And so then I was like, okay, when I pick y'all up from school, we're going to go. So we're in this indoor playground on a school night at 7 o'clock just because we got to make up for, so it's certain things but they're really good at, like I said, expressing themselves and we talk to them for real. Like
Not
we don't
sugarcoated.
keep it. Yeah.
Like we working, they went overtime. It wasn't us. But we'll make it up to you.
And luckily, there are kids that's always asking for stuff. "Can you buy me? Can you?" So it's like, if you want us to get this, then, we gotta
we
work.
we got to make this money to afford that. Awesome,
So they
awesome.
definitely get it, and it's interesting when, some of the class projects come home when they gotta explain what mommy and daddy does for a living and things like that, or it'll be a day like today, if they came in right now, they'd be like, "You were home all day? What were you" it's that whole thing, and it's like, "I'm working."
Right,
It's interesting to see though,
right,
try to comprehend what's happening.
right. So talking about that, how do they describe what it is that you do?
I think one project said that I'm a photographer. One said that I'm an editor. What did my youngest say to that? I think she said I was a basketball player. My son thinks that only women can play basketball, men play football. But the oldest that she's definitely the one that strictly just says I'm a photographer. And I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Beautiful.
She did have a project where they had to, start their own business, and I think that was the first time as we sat and talked about that type of stuff, she was like, "I had no clue that, I know, you say you going to work and we be in this gym or this field or this," and she was like, "But okay." So that was her first and she's 10 now, so she in the 5th grade now, she get it.
Right. Understanding, understanding. So you think they're gonna go down the entrepreneurship route?
That's a good question. So she said she wanted to be a doctor, but I felt like that's the generic answer. At
That we
one point, she wanted to be what was it? What she call it? She didn't call it an influencer, but she was watching like the kids that play with toys on YouTube, and so she wanted to do that. And I was like, well, I guess they are successful too. That's considered a real thing now. But yeah, it's interesting to we try to get them in as much as possible.
Right,
So, they all do play sports. They all, I thought she was gonna be into the arts and theater and singing and dancing and things like that, but just try to get them in as much as possible.
right. Gotcha. So for any mom that or for any woman who's about to go into this new journey of motherhood, What is one piece of advice through your experience that you would wanna give them?
Be patient with yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, you're gonna go through some highs and lows. Your thoughts and mentality will change throughout the process. One day you'll look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself. One day you'll look and it's like, oh, there she go. Everybody will get on your nerves one day, and then you love everybody the next. So yes, just be patient. There is no time limit on postpartum. Most people look at that 6 weeks and then they're like, I should be back to normal. And it's like, no, sometimes it takes years. Your hair change, your skin change, your friend circle sometimes change. It's a lot that happens and you change. You know what I'm saying? The things that you used to value, your value system starts to change. So yes, just be patient with yourself.
That's beautiful, that's beautiful. Now as a business owner, what piece of advice would you give to a business owner of something that they can do to make this transition easier or smoother for them?
I would say prioritize, and you can break it up into quarters. As a former athlete, I looked at things in quarter systems, and that was even by my dad. I have a teammate that does a little life coaching it, and she actually suggested that she was like, break your day up into quarters. So if you know you got to take the kids to school at a certain time, then what time does your first quarter start?
Mm,
And she was like, "What is it that you need to get accomplished before your day really gets to running with the kids and things like that?" So I would say kind of prioritize based on the results that you're trying to get in order to keep that stable.
ooh, that's a good one. I never thought about that, breaking it up into quarters.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a
And
gem.
she was like, same thing. She was like, be patient, start with the first quarter, get that into a routine, then move on to the second quarter. And it actually works. I
Wow.
found I got a lot more done in that first quarter than anything. I was like, "Oh, this works." Don't look at your phone first, get that stuff done, and most of the time, it was like getting up at 6 a.m. and, well, the kids, they don't have to be at school to 9:30, so it's that time frame. So it's not super early, but it's also time to yourself
Right.
because
Ooh,
everybody else is kinda still asleep.
right. Okay, now last question. As a wife, what advice would you give? Especially like, I would say honestly, like, being a wife and now transferring, like transitioning into a mother, that's a challenge where it's like, I'm just trying to focus on this child right now and make sure she good, you know? So what advice would you give as a wife that's going through that transition? Especially like we always hear, like, the first year is difficult. What advice would you give for that?
Yeah, communicate and be honest. Be honest about how you feel, be honest about your needs, and be ready to hear the reverse.
Mhm.
Because that's gonna change frequently
Mhm.
as the baby grows. And so you just wanna be honest and have those conversations, about what's happening in the household.
Mhm.
That is no cookie cutter for that one. It's based off of emotions, it's based off of what's actually happening. Like my son has asthma and he had it very early on. So, you have those alarming things that may come into play that might change the course of what y'all had planned or whatever the case may be. So it gotta be an open line of communication and understanding that, your feelings need to be heard. Not necessarily validated, but they need to be heard
Mm.
throughout the process.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Ooh, so many gems, so many gems. Thank you so much, Erica.
Listen, no problem. And look, still figuring out. You're gonna always be figuring it out and growing and changing. And these conversations help because a lot of times you feel like that you don't get to talk to other adults,
Right,
talking to kids.
right.
So these conversations help.
Right, and it's also one of those things where you feel like you're not alone, like, there's so many
Yeah.
women that have gone through this transition, there's so many conversations that we should have, and sometimes we're afraid to have the conversations, we're afraid to show, like, "Hey, I'm feeling this way, like, is this normal?" Or you don't wanna seem weak, or you don't wanna seem as if you don't know something, and the reality is we're all experiencing these things, and
Yeah.
that's what villages are for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely always wanted to appear that I have it together, and especially well, it's funny because a lot of the spaces that I'm in, I'm the oldest. I'm tapping on 40, but I'm not 40. So, but it's still like, you're made to feel like you're the older one, but for me, energy-wise and I'm like, I still kinda feel like I'm in my 20s, but
Right.
so
Right,
it's
that's
like
just a
it's
number.
right. But it's just that whole thing of it, your circles changing, you seeing what different people are going through in different stages. And so it's just an interesting dynamic. It's keeping your feet grounded, being human. I think that's the part we forget. We everybody's human.
Yes, yes, awesome. Well, Erica, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for just sharing all this amazing advice. And I know that it's helped me, and I know it's going to help so many amazing creative moms out there. So, Erica, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
You too.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Baby Bump and Business. I hope today's conversation reminded you that you're not alone in this journey and that there's so much power in building something beautiful while becoming someone new. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, review, or share it with another creative mom who needs the encouragement. Your support helps this community grow and lets more stories like ours be heard. To stay connected and get updates on new episodes and real talk from creative moms like you, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Baby Bump and Business. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and give yourself all the grace that you deserve.